Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Win a Pageant podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Darby, and today I have a beautiful, beautiful woman. And when I say beautiful woman, I do not just mean on the outside. In pageantry, we often believe that beauty is only on the outside. But listen, you girls know this beauty goes the whole way through. And I can't wait to have her share her beautiful story with you that started when she was in her 20s and of course has lasted until all through this incredible career that she has enjoyed until now. Her name is Carrie Boller, but you probably remember her as Carrie Prejean from the 2009 Miss USA Pageant. And the reason you probably remember her is because she had a question of all questions. Y'all know on stage question is no joke. And she was asked from the judging panel themselves. Okay, now your question on stage, she's in the top 5 on stage. Let's have your question from the judge, Perez Hilton. And this is before Perez Hilton was even a person at that time. Okay, no one really knew about who but Perez Hilton being an openly gay blogger. And he asked her a very deep, important question. And it was a question of all questions. And I want her to share how that experience was on stage, because y'all know it's not easy to stand firm in your faith. And Carrie did just that. And it has made all the difference. So please welcome Carrie Boller to the show. Carrie, thank you so much for being here. I am so happy to have you chat with our group today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us what that was like, that experience where here you are at the Miss USA pageant. You're in the top 5, I believe, was the final question. And you get this question. Can you share a little bit about how you were feeling up to that moment? And of course, I haven't shared the question yet, but I would love for you to share that from your perspective, being the contestant standing on stage. Can you take us back into that moment? What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, it feels like it was yesterday, even though it was about 12 years ago. But it was just surreal, being on stage at Miss USA. And here I was, about to potentially be crowned Miss USA and go to Miss Universe. And it was, a dream of mine. And I think it was every girl's dream who was on that stage. And I was always trained that you always remember who you are and where you come from, and never forget the way you were raised, because you can really answer any question if you're just authentically yourself. And my pageant director always taught me, if you're asked a question, don't ever lie, because once you start that lie, then it's just a ripple effect, and you're in this hole and you can't even get out of it. So as long as you remember who you are, where you come from, and what you really believe, you can always win the judges over. And so I was always trained to just be myself and to tell the truth and to speak from my heart. And it was just, I still remember standing there in the top 5, and it was just, an honor of my lifetime, really. And almost became Miss USA, but God had a different plan for me that night. So, yeah.
And when you say almost became Miss USA, as I remember watching this pageant, and I'm sure many of our listeners remember this time, for those of us who've been in pageantry for a while, it doesn't feel like that long ago, because it made such an impact on our hearts, everyone, everywhere watching this experience. And leading up to that, Miss USA being such a long preparation period, and everybody's making their guesses and who's going to win. And you were slotted as the person by multiple sources. Everybody thought, well, gosh, of course, California. She's got the look. She's got the poise. She's got that. You had it all. And so you were really, in all of our minds, destined to be the winner. What did that feel like going through pageant week, kind of feeling like, yeah, okay, I'm probably going to win this thing? How'd that feel?
No, I had this sense of confidence, going into Las Vegas. We were there for 3 weeks. We lived, with the girls for 3 weeks, and we all got along. That's one of the stereotypes that I love to dismiss, because, we all loved each other. There was no cattiness. There was no jealousy or any, cutting people's hair in the middle of the night. There was none of that.
You hear all the horror stories, right?
Horror stories. But I really did feel, not in an arrogant way, but I really did feel like I was the girl. I really did. They asked California, to do a lot of interviews. They would say California, Texas, all the big states usually. But there was something that I just felt like they always wanted me to be a part of it, like whether it was a photo shoot or an interview or a video clip that they were, doing for the big night. And so the chatter was, California is the girl to win. And it was amazing to feel that way, and I felt like God really, was using me for such a time as this, because even during the 3 weeks, we were able to do Bible studies. We were able to really connect with the girls and really just share our stories and share kind of where we've come from. And, not all the girls have the perfect, fairy tale story. A lot of us grew up in a broken home like myself and, overcame. We're overcomers. And so to have this moment of, wow, this could be mine was just so incredible. And I was truly humbled by it. But yeah, I really did feel like I was the girl to win that night.
Yeah. And it's I'm sure you had lots of mixed emotions, because we want to enter pageant week with that level of confidence. And I feel like it's almost like when you are performing and someone's cheering for you as you perform better, right? The best is drawn out of you. And so I feel like when you go as the girl that you feel like, oh, they're asking me. Oh, they're asking me again. Oh, wow. It gives you that level of confidence that makes you even perform so much better. But what a lot of women get sucked into is that then they get this sense of, now I have to win, and at all costs. And you didn't have that. Mm-hmm. You had instead this strong, firm foundation that you were able to stand on, so that when Perez asked you this question, you were able to handle it with such beauty and grace. So can you share with our audience, you might not remember the exact details of the way that he phrased it, but maybe you do.
Yeah.
Could you share his question and what went through your mind, what zinged through your mind, probably in a nanosecond, but I'm sure it was like a gazillion different things. Can you share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the question verbatim. So, so I was called into the top 10, then into the top 5. And then the top 5 was asked a kind of a fun question. And my question was something about basketball. And I was able to share how I'm a college athlete and I play basketball and I have a great 3-point shot. And, my director always said, use that to your advantage, use those little things that really people would say, wow, a pageant girl that plays basketball, or, something that really makes you stand out. And so I nailed that question. It was like, hit it out of the park. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was smiling. And then the final question, obviously, I picked a name out of the jar, and it was Perez Hilton. And it was funny because all the girls were joking that Paris Hilton was one of the judges. We didn't even know who this judge was. And it ended up being the blogger, Perez Hilton. And out of all the judges, I got the worst question and the worst judge that I could have ever selected. And
worst, I want to clarify that, because I know what you mean. Like, this is the question that every pageant girl wishes that she would never get asked. And so when you're called in the top 5, you're hoping for the best question ever. And then you got this one, which, as you're saying, it's the worst, because if you look at all the other questions that people got, this is the question that nobody would have wanted to answer, especially from this judge. And you were the one that got it. Yeah. Okay. Tell me.
So then he said, Vermont recently became the 4th state to legalize same-sex marriage. Do you believe other states should follow suit? Why or why not? And I just remember standing there, and I looked out in the audience. I saw my family. I saw my mom, my dad. I saw Donald Trump in the front row because he owned it at the time. And I just remember seeing all the lights and the cameras and everything. And I just felt like all eyes were on me. And I started to answer the question kind of trying to play both sides. And then it was like, the Holy Spirit in me was just like, you know who you are, you know where you come from, you know what you believe. You better not be a sellout at this point. Like, I've brought you here this far, and you better not sell yourself. And so I just said, I believe marriage should be between a man and a woman. No offense to anyone out there. I said, but that's the way I was raised. And that's how I think it should be, between a man and a woman. And you could hear a bunch of cheers, which really, gave me hope. But you could also see a lot of faces which were completely stunned. The girl who was supposed to win dared to speak the truth, her truth. and nothing but the truth. So
That's right. The real truth. The real truth. Yes.
And I just, his face, he just kind of sat back in his chair and he was just like, he just kind of looked stunned. Like, how dare you? You're from California. You should be, more, I guess, wanting me to answer the way he wanted me to answer. He thought that I was going to be the girl to sell myself for that crown. And I just wasn't. So surreal. It was, and then commercial break, I looked over at Kentucky and I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And she said, you know what, Carrie, you did the right thing.
Wow.
Did the right thing.
Wow.
And it was just a storm, total storm.
Yes. And I imagine in that moment, you had a knowing that things were not the same anymore, that for 3 weeks, oh, California. Oh, Carrie, everybody has to watch Carrie. Oh, Carrie, California. Oh, and then all of a sudden you get that question. And in a second, I imagine you saw it fade.
Yeah. And
what was that like?
I mean, I was so sad, and I was also relieved, because I was sad in the sense that I knew that my dream of being Miss USA was probably over. But I was also relieved because I knew that I did the right thing. And had I caved just because of what he wanted me to say, him being an openly gay activist, it would have been so easy for me to just give him what he wanted, so that way I could win. And so then when the commercial break came back and they said, we're ready to announce the winner, and they did 4th runner-up, 3rd runner-up, 2nd runner-up. And I just remember standing there thinking, oh my gosh, like, could I win this thing with that answer? Like, it gave me hope, thinking, wow, maybe the judges, I guess out of the 8 judges, I know many of them probably, after the fact, I know they gave me zeros. They didn't even score me. They completely disregarded me that night. But I know that a lot of them selected me the winner. So that's what balanced it out, why I got 1st runner-up. So it was just, I couldn't even believe I made it that far, but I did the right thing. I sleep really good at night. I hold my head high, and God is still using me 12 years later to speak the truth. And I feel like God, even just the other day when I spoke at the Cherish conference at Awaken, I feel like God was telling me, Carrie, you were thinking so small. You were thinking so temporary. You were thinking this yearly temporary Miss USA. When it's all over, the year's over, nobody even knows who you are. And you fade away. But when you stand for truth, when you stand for something, God will use you, and he will glorify your platform and give you a platform even far greater than the temporary one of Miss USA. So that's what he's done. And I truly give God all the glory, because I wouldn't be still standing. Like my book says, I would not be still standing if it wasn't for him. So
yes, that's such a beautiful reminder of the fact that the things, like you said, it's so temporary. And that's really, this whole world is temporary. The space that we're living in here on this planet Earth is a temporary, but you are storing your treasures in heaven. And by doing that, like I just think, like, gosh, as such a young girl at that time, you were how old? 20, 21?
At 21. Yeah.
21 years old, to receive a question like that and to know yourself. Like, I'm like thinking, gosh, her mama raised her right. Like you had some strong family and people in your life, likely, that, and your coach, it sounds like, was like, no, truth, you have to stick with yours. And what I find interesting is that the girl who ended up winning was, I think, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so it's like, wait, who? But it's funny, because if she would have gotten that same question, if anyone else would have gotten that same question, I believe, even if they would have been able to answer the same way you did, it would not have had the impact it had, because the fact that you were California is, I believe, what made all the difference. Because of course, someone from the Bible Belt would answer that way. They could have written it off like, well, yeah, blah, blah, whatever. But at that time, people thought that California would have voted for gay marriage at the time. They thought that, oh, but isn't California like super liberal? Shouldn't she have represented her state? That was one of the things that I'm sure you got as backlash of like, oh, well, she should have been, she's speaking for California. And it's like, no, guys, she's not a politician.
Well, do you remember Prop 8? So do you remember Proposition 8? So
yes,
the majority of people in my state did not want gay marriage. So I really was representing my people.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And it's fascinating to think that all of the people in the audience, we can look at and say, oh, she should have said, she should have said, but God didn't whisper to us. God didn't position us. God positioned you, and God whispered to you. And I love that you stood by that. I love that you stood for that. And what is so fascinating, and this is why, like, Carrie, I can't say how many times I've used you as an example for what God can do in the supernatural when we do what he asks us to do in the natural. He will add his super to it and take you light years ahead of all of your competitors in a flash. And that is exactly what he did by removing this opportunity to have the crown, like you said, for 1 year, which would have then disappeared. Instead, he gave you something even better, which was a voice for a cause that would last for decades to come, really. So what was the very next thing that happened? Okay, so you didn't win the title, but the very next thing that happened was, can you take us to that?
So the very next thing that happened was I was in the dressing room getting ready to pack all my stuff up. And I remember the news was there and they all wanted to interview me. And so North Carolina was kind of just like, taking pictures, whatever. And then she was packing up her things, ready to go back to New York. And I remember the director said, oh, you need to, well, I went up to my hotel room with my parents and kind of like, I watched it. I was like, I have to see what it was like, because it was all a blur. I knew what I stood for, but I didn't know how I said it.
Right.
And so I watched it. And that was when the judge went on a rant and like threatened to like assault me and like said I gave the worst answer in pageant history. No, I just didn't give the answer that he wanted me to give. And then after that, I was flown directly to New York and I went on every show. Miss USA didn't even get a press tour because nobody really cared what she had to say, because I think she got a question about what do you look for in a man or something stupid. So yeah, I know. So
this is what God does. This is how God works. Like, I love this.
So New York, I'm flying in the plane. I'm by myself. My mom had to get on another plane. And so I'm by myself and there was a guy next to me and he's like, you're that girl that, stood up last night. I'm so proud of you. So it was like little chatter like that God was really like saying, hey, I got you, like there's people who have been waiting for a voice like yours, and this was before like cancel culture. This was before political correctness. Like this was before Donald Trump, all that. So I was on the plane and then I landed in New York and my pastor at the time was in New York, same time as me. So he met me and went on he prayed with me over every interview. Yeah, it was like God orchestrated the whole thing.
I did not know that. That is so cool. Wow. Yeah, he positioned you together.
At the same time we landed. It was a miracle. And so he went with me and he's like, Carrie, he looked at me and he said, are you willing to lose this? This is the question I have to ask you. Are you willing to lose it all? And I said, yeah. And he said, let's go. So we went on and mind you, my pageant directors said, now you go to New York and you better apologize and you better take back what you said because you offended a lot of people and we're not really happy with you. So the first thing you do on Matt Lauer on the Today Show is you apologize. And so Matt Lauer asked me, do you have any regrets? And I said, Matt, I have zero regrets. I would rather be biblically correct than politically correct. And I said what I meant and I meant what I said. So I am not apologizing. In fact, I'm down.
Yes. Oh man, that had to have been so hard, but it sounds like God supported you along the way. He sent people you knew and trusted. He was able to, I just love that, what an incredible experience. You must've felt really close to God in that moment. I imagine, just be like, hey, God and I, we're on this mission together. Like, let's do this.
Well, it was a real test because, God gives us blessings, but he can easily take them away. stand for truth and for what's right, what are we? You know, at the end of the day, we're just sellouts. And I always was raised to never compromise, you know, no matter what, like for anyone or anything. And so I I was very confident with my stance. I felt really good about my stance. I didn't even waver. I didn't even doubt. I didn't even question. It was, I know what's right and I know what to do. And I'm not apologizing. Number one, I'm entitled to my own opinion. And number two, this is my truth. Don't ask me a question that you don't want my answer.
Yes, that's so good. And then I love the ripple effect, because then you went on to do motivational speaking, which is what everybody wants to do when they win Miss USA anyway. You went on to do that for audiences that needed to hear this specific message. You suddenly had a really powerful message that you were able to share with people. You wrote a book. Can we see the book again? Will you hold up the book for us again? Still standing. Look at that, Carrie Prejean. And I love that you were able to share this message. Can you share who encouraged you to write the book?
So Donald Trump owned it at the time. And he was such a dear friend. I mean, I used to call him on the phone. He'd be on the golf course and I'd be like, Donald, I need your help. You know, they're having me go to the gay pride parade and I don't want to go to the gay pride parade. I mean, this was like, wow. It was relentless what my directors did to me after I answered that question. They wanted me to like go to LA and go in the gay pride parade and like wave to all the gay pride. Like, I mean, it was literally, they were literally like making a mockery out of me. And I said, I'm not going to do that. Like, you know, and I never wanted to make it about the like gay people, you know, like my thing was, I believe that marriage was designed by God, given to us by God. So don't change marriage. Marriage is from God. So it's not up to us to like redefine marriage. Marriage is one man, one woman. That's the way I look at it. That's the way I'm always going to look at it. And I don't think that that's very controversial, you know? And so I remember being in calling Donald Trump one day and just saying, you know, I don't know what to do. These people are relentless. They're, you know, doing all these things, having me like go to all these crazy events and just to make a mockery out of me. And he said, Carrie, what do you want to do? Like, what is it that you want to do? Because I want to help you. And I was like, wow, like one of the most powerful men in the world offering to help a young 21-year-old who's very controversial at the time. And I thought, wow, what a great man he is to stick his neck out for me. And he's like, do you want to go on Dancing with the Stars? Do you want to go on The Apprentice? Like, what do you want to do? And he's like, do you want to host Fox News? And I was able to do that for a few days. And that was fun. And he got me on The View with all those crazy ladies on The View. And that was a nightmare. But I said, all I want to do is write a book. I said, I want to write a book because nobody can take that away from me. And that's my story and my truth. And so he signed off on it that day. And thank God for Donald Trump, because this is going to be forever. Nobody can take this. This is forever. And it's my story and it's the truth. And so this is all I wanted to do, was write this book.
That is so beautiful. And I love that he supported that process for you. I think that sometimes that pageant in that era was getting a lot of backlash because there was controversy after controversy, and people were often pointing at Donald Trump saying it was his fault, his fault, his fault. And so I love hearing the story of how he really made himself available to you and helped you along the way, which is what I believe he always has wanted to do. You know, so it's cool to hear that personal story from you. I love that.
Yeah, he really is for the underdog. I mean, he just wants to help people. I mean, look at me, a young 21-year-old girl. He saw the potential in me. And you know what he's told me? He told me at Trump Tower, he said, Carrie, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. He said, nobody knows who the winner is. Everybody knows who you are. And you did the right thing. You stood up for what was right and what is true to you. And nobody can argue with that, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. You have such a great legacy as a result of a small decision under big spotlights that you made that had the weight of the world upon you, that you could have chosen anything. And with and that 30 seconds, it's like feels so like a nothing, but it was such a big deal and it had such a ripple effect. And even so since then, so now I want to kind of like bring our listeners forward. So since then you married a superstar, You had two beautiful children. You are now rocking your own business. Can you share a little bit about, I know we're almost out of time here, so share a bit about kind of what you're up to today.
Yes. So my husband watched Miss USA that night, and he was working out in the gym, and he saw me on stage, and he said, I have to meet that girl. And sure enough, 6 months later, we met, got engaged, got married. We have two beautiful children, Grace and Brody. We have a little boy and a little girl. And yeah, so we've been married almost 11 years. And I started a business. I have my own jewelry line, and it is just something that I'm so passionate about. I love making women feel beautiful in their own skin. And it is a Christian line. So I do a lot of, Jesus. I do a lot of, this is a Jesus coin right here. I don't know if you can see it. I do a lot of crosses. All of my pieces have meaning, and they're beautiful. So
They're beautiful.
Loved entering that space of fashion and beauty, and really making it my own.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're so gorgeous. I'm wearing yours that I got when we met.
Oh,
yes, I love them. Yeah, and I find myself wearing them all the time. What I think is so lovely is that you have an incredible sense of style, and you bring to this a level of elegance that is, I remember you were saying how it's like, you feel like you either have to buy this like super cheapo jewelry or like ridiculously high end. And so you found something that is timeless, high quality, will last ages, but isn't priced in the thousands,
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a lovely, beautiful thing. And you do such a great job with that. I know. So when we met at Awaken Church here in San Diego, when you spoke there, I was like, Carrie, oh my gosh, I use you as an example all the time because of the impact that you made on my life at that time when I was competing. And I thought, wow, this girl is like doing it. She's doing the thing that we all want the opportunity to do. And yet most of us would crumble under that pressure if it weren't for the strong foundation. And it sounds like you really have that. So I want to just tell our listeners to follow you on social media at Bella Grace Jewelry, because that's where you can see all of her beautiful designs. And all of these designs are things that she has custom created. So they truly are one of a kind, stunningly gorgeous. Check them out there. And you're so fun to follow on social media because of all your trips and all your travel. I just love following you and your inspiration and stuff. And you're doing, I want to just take a moment to personally honor you for the work that you are doing here in California now for our children in schools. Because my daughter is still very young, just being born less than a year ago, and isn't in schools yet. But I know that the work that you are doing to advocate for the freedoms in schools right now is going to impact her generation. And so I want to say a personal thank you. It's making me choke up because I know it's work. It's not easy. It's hard work. And you're still to this day fighting a fight that we are as Christians are called to fight. And this is a fight that will never end. It's a fight against the powers and principalities in the spirit realm. And so just like you said, that we're not against people. We're not fighting against people. What our battle is against the powers and principalities of the spirit world. And that is a battle we will never stop fighting. And so I want to commend you and honor you for the work that you are still doing to this day, that is in the political sphere, in education, and across so many different arenas, that you're using the voice that you have, the voice that you were given by God all those years ago, because you stood for truth. So I thank you and I honor you, Carrie, for fighting the good fight with us.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much.
Yes. I know that our time is limited here, so I'm going to wrap up. Is there any final wisdom that you might share with our listeners? Any final thoughts that you have that you would want to speak to pageant women around the world? What would you want to share with them?
I just think that God has given, women in general. I think every woman is beautiful in her own way. And I think that when God gives us beauty, because we're made in his image and he wants us to be beautiful, but I wrestled with this for many years, and it was, what do you want me to, you gave me beauty, exterior beauty, I guess you could say, but the lesson really is, it is so important to recognize that the inner beauty, and it sounds so cheesy and corny, but truly the inner beauty shines from within and it just comes out. And so I always teach, even my little girl, I always tell her, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It doesn't matter how much makeup you have on or, the beautiful jewelry that you're wearing. It matters what's inside. And God cares about our hearts. He cares about our minds. He cares about what we say. And so I really try to use my beauty for good. And I want to encourage all the women who are listening. I'm sure you're all beautiful, inside and out. You have an amazing coach. So I know that you are just, rocking and rolling. But really, there's nothing more important than letting your inner beauty shine from within, because beauty does fade. It does. We're all going to get old and wrinkly and gray. And there's nothing more important than a beautiful woman on the inside. And so use your beauty for good and use your voice. You have a voice. God has given you beauty, but also he's given you favor in the world, And I think you can use your voice for good and stand up for what you believe in and never back down and never compromise for anyone or anything.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing that. And I think that you are such a beautiful role model, truly a true role model for our generation still to this day. So I thank you and I honor you. Thanks for being on the Win a Pageant podcast.
Thank you. Mwah.